Time after time, the young mountain lion always left the bank of the river. The water's course was winding and flanked with willow, and it flowed inland, not out. The lion was young, his paws and eyes fresh. He had just a couple of years. And in youth, he'd leave to find his own territory. Perhaps one held by a distant ancestor passed on, the land opened up like a flower, and he headed north from the moving water. In this time, the calendar on the wall inside the cashier's room of the casino said August 24th, 2012. It was just before sunrise, and a man sat in the fluorescent tiled room caged in with all the money. But before his shift was over, he heard a commotion on the edge of the carpeted casino floor. At the revolving front door, another man was calling 911. The glass entrance normally spun like a dust devil, depositing tourists with suitcases and locals with social security checks, dropped directly into the 2-block behemoth of a casino hotel. But the spinning had stopped, and the man explained to dispatch that there was a big animal trying to get into the building. The mountain lion planted his feet in the open wedge of the paused revolving door, gazing in at the slot machines and at the panicked man holding a cell phone. The sagebrush was gone, and his new territory appeared to be claimed, not just by man, but by beeping, flashing machine, and then the sting of a tranquilizer dart. He slinked under the outdoor stage, graced the previous weekend by a tribute to the band Journey, and then 2 more darts, and the mountain lion drifted off to sleep. As the sun rose, the revolving door was spinning again, round and round and round. This is The Wind, a podcast from a desk in the mountains. This episode is called Those Who Feast with the Mountain Lion.
The Wind. With Phil Corbett.
I've gone to the other place and seen it. It's very beautiful.
The path flowed like water from one place to the next, and Dean Barlese walked along it.
So I've gone 3 times, I guess, in my hospital stays. I'm walking up this little trail with green grass and flowers, sagebrush all around. You can hear the birds singing.
And then another time, there was a group out there, a group of protesters crouching in the sagebrush. They were away from camp now, several paces off the ribbon of a dirt road that cut from the paved highway to a new chain-link fence. Behind the group, a teepee stood tall against the ridge. Sage was waist-high as far as you could see down into the valley, rippling to the next range in the east. Purple, soft blue in the distance, the Nevada sun filtered through the hushed green leaves to reveal to them on the desert floor below a nest.
You had small birds in there that were just hatched, and the mother was trying to protect them.
And and then the group was back at their protest camp. This was before the police came. A few valleys and a couple years west of the protest, I pull up to Dean's house. There's a hearse parked out back. It's broken down, next to the flat spot where he erects a sweat lodge. Dean Barlese lives on the Pyramid Lake Paiute Reservation, in a small tribal community on the southern end of Pyramid Lake. This is where all the water from Lake Tahoe ends up, and stays. Pyramid is what's called a terminal lake. The Great Basin is a closed system, so the water doesn't flow out to the ocean, instead flowing inland to sinks in desert terminus. This one, at the end of the Truckee River, shimmers turquoise as we sit in Dean's living room.
Check, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
A framed print of Starry Night hangs above the wood stove.
Dean Barlese in Nixon, Nevada.
And across from that, a huge horizontal pin-up centerfold above the doorway, featuring a seductively lounging Bigfoot. Dean Barlese is an elder of the tribe. He's also a spiritual leader and a two-spirit person. Two-spirit is a traditional gender role that does not fit into the Western gender binary of man and woman. Before contact, before settlement, before religious conversions, a different understanding of gender was common across several cultures in North America.
Well, my grandparents, they kept alive some of the traditions, culture, dancing, singing, things that were pretty much outlawed at that time by the government. They kept my teachings alive also, two-spirit teachings. They kept those alive.
Traditionally, the Northern Paiute have recognized several genders. Dean tells me about 5. Each has their own established cultural roles and obligations as part of the community.
We've always been here. Being two-spirited, or in our Paiute language, we say, Mukakui tuhu uno tukar, those who feast with the mountain lion. That is an ancient term for who we are, what we are. And in our old ways, we were created along with man and woman, combination of both male and female. And we were the teachers, healers, caretakers of the knowledge, traditions that were passed on, stories.
Teachers, healers, storytellers, and often guides between life and death.
We had a lot to do with getting people ready for burial, dressing them up, wrapping them, doing the final prayers. So even today, once in a while, somebody asks me to come in and go into the mortuaries and dress the bodies, get them ready for burial. In the old days, we'd wrap the people up, take them out to burial. It's sad, but it's also a strong thing to do to help people on their journey.
And this traditional cultural obligation is a big reason that Dean went out to the protest camp. The story goes like this. Early 2021, the Bureau of Land Management, the federal agency in charge of about 70% of land in the state, approved the construction of a new lithium mine in northern Nevada. It happened quick. Some believed that the environmental review was rushed and that the tribes were not properly consulted. In response, a group set up camp that winter to protest construction. The population was fluid. Many folks came for just a few nights at a time and joined the camp by the road way out in the desert, sometimes blocking, sometimes documenting, or just witnessing the heavy machines. The core group was a mix of tribal members, some from nearby, some not, and a couple non-native environmentalists who had experience with direct action, social media, and writing press releases. The group referred to the land as Peehee. In Paiute, rotten moon. On the press releases of the mining company, though, it had a different name. Thacker Pass Lithium Mine, a project of Lithium Nevada, a subsidiary of the Canadian company Lithium Americas, one name in a string of mergers, acquisitions, and spin-offs from Vancouver to Argentina. Lithium Nevada set up an office in Winnemucca, the closest sizable town about 65 miles to the south. Since lithium is currently a crucial part of battery technology, the new mine and its cheerleaders and regulators could all lean on the promise of getting the world off fossil fuels. The protesters were then in this odd position, standing in the dirt road arguing against what many called green energy to save a stretch of remote desert mountains. It was not an easy public message to pen. That maybe the silver bullet of electric cars and electric heating and everything else was misdirection. A trade-off that ignored the underlying problems of overuse, of exponential growth, of the expulsion of places. The idea that one layer beneath the promise of green energy is the deeper problem of living at odds with the land and each other. Complete dislocation. But maybe those ideas were so big and so uncommunicable that they rose from the camp and became towering clouds of thunder in the electric sunset. When Dean heard about the protest of the proposed lithium mine in a remote mountain range in northern Nevada, they immediately knew the spot.
Yes, we've gone to places like that. Massacre sites from the Snake War in 1864 to 1868. And the elders took me out there and they showed us other massacre sites within the area besides Peehee.
Though absent in the initial report from the BLM, Dean knew this place as the site of a horrible massacre in 1865.
It was a military operation from Fort Mcdermitt, and they found the people camped there, and the military did a morning attack like they always do in so many other areas. They attacked the people and started killing them. Snake War was very brutal in the way it treated the Paiute, Bannock, Shoshone people. They were trying to wipe us out, annihilate us, so that was a very brutal time. So anytime they caught people in camp, they would kill them all, try to kill them all. There were a few survivors on this one, though.
Of the entire camp, just 3 survived. 3 children. The bodies of the rest were left where they fell or where they had been shot in their sleep.
The military made sure the people didn't come back and bury their people and say prayers over them. So the people that are laying out there are still out there. They're still out there.
The site was never marked. No gravestones or plaques, just history, passed down by the elders, and an expanse of brush skirting a big volcanic plug over the valley. When the sun set over the protest camp, the same stars slipped into view. Pinpoints in the obsidian sky. battery has two main parts: the cathode, the anode. Between them is a separator and a sort of fluid called an electrolyte. Lithium is a lightweight element that can be used in both the cathode and electrolyte solution. Basically, it holds a charge, and it can be reused over and over again. When the battery degrades, the lithium can be removed and reused without limit for the most part, assuming that somebody is incentivized or required to recycle it. There are other materials that can do this too, hold a charge. Sodium, magnesium, aluminum, vanadium, but lithium is lightweight and already standard, so momentum makes it the current mineral of choice. It is also abundant. There are big deposits in Chile, Bolivia, Argentina, China, Arkansas, Pennsylvania, California. Here, the mine plans to use a water-intensive hydraulic mining process that will remove lithium-rich clay from the earth. Then more water and chemicals to process it into commercial-grade lithium carbonate. Nevada is the driest state in the U.S., and the protesters and at least one nearby rancher believe that adding an industrial-scale water user will decimate the meager water supply that is here. But this landscape has long been marked on the government maps as wasteland. Gold, silver, nuclear testing, data centers, the things they don't want end up here. And the things they do want flow out in big trucks. And so the protesters stood in the road. One of the more dramatic confrontations bounced around on social media. A shaky video of a young man sprinting toward a backhoe on the dirt road. He got in the road and stood in front of it, yipping and shouting, when the man operating the machine jolted towards him. The big metal bucket narrowly avoided the kid's head. The men in the heavy machinery eventually stopped, and then the video ends.
It made us feel good to stop construction, desecration of that place, sacred land, sacred ancestors that are still out there. It made us feel good. And we knew the ancestors were with us by the little whirlwinds that came up to the road they had built. So we knew we weren't alone.
Not far from these little whirlwinds rising from the newly cut mine road, about 160 years south, a man named Frederick West Lander met with the Paiute war chief, Numaga. In 1860, Numaga had successfully defended his people with an incredible feat of military strategy. He lured a large group of war-bound vigilantes and miners and settlers hell-bent on racial bloodshed into a canyon on the Truckee River near its terminus in Pyramid Lake, just a little bit upstream from Dean's house. The settlers rushed in confidently, guns drawn, right into an ambush, and the Paiute warriors appeared in mass on a sandy ridge. Then, many more silently closed ranks behind them in a crescent, pinning the storming ragtag brigade against the icy current. Their clothes were still wet and heavy from several nights of late spring snow. Their plans to exterminate the tribe once and for all were shot to pieces, as many of the invaders lay dead in the sand. When the few battered survivors returned to their newly established cities, Virginia, Carson, they enlisted a cavalry from California, who returned in force but only managed a stalemate with the tribe. The Paiutes were able to retreat from their home on the lake, and they roamed the desert for a long time, as the U.S. government waged war on their way of life and built an overland wagon route through their homelands. Frederick West Lander was in charge of ensuring the safety of that wagon route and set up a meeting with War Chief Numaga. As custom, they sat silently for hours before speaking, Numaga studying Lander's face and intentions until sundown. Then a pipe was passed, and the meeting began. According to an account compiled by author Farrell Egan, the two men spoke of past fights, settled accounts, tried to agree on the truth of things to varying degrees of success. Lander, on behalf of industry leaders and the federal government, then asked the Paiutes for safe passage through their land, heading toward the mining towns in western Nevada and over the Great Mountains into California. "You have bighorn sheep and antelope ranges that the whites do not want," Lander said. "You have lakes full of fish that the whites do not want." A decade later, Numaga was dead of disease and a fort was built in those unwanted antelope ranges. And the Snake War unfolded as the Paiutes and Shoshone and Bannock wandered the steppes in retreat. And the military approached a camp at dawn and shot through the tent walls, killing everybody, entire families, and only 3 children survived.
When our people are still out there and no prayers were said over them, the spirits are still wandering, which in our Paiute culture is not a right thing. It's not right to have spirits wandering like that. They need to be sent across the Milky Way where everyone else is, but because of these massacres that happen, we still have to deal with them, even to this day. People think, oh, that's just a bunch of hogwash, superstition, but it's not. When you're native and you have to deal with it, it's not superstition. We have to continue to live with that fact that our people are still out there. So there's no rest for them, and there's no rest for our people as long as they're like that.
There's a famous painting by John Gast called American Progress. It's from 1872, and it was in my high school history book in the section about manifest destiny. In the center of the frame, a personification of the United States as a robed woman floats above the landscape, stringing telegraph wire behind her. She travels from right to left, east to west. The familiar characters are there beneath her, in order, a partial cast of American history. The buffalo and the Indians in retreat, then the entrepreneurs with guns and pickaxe. Behind them, the pioneer family, the farmers, the industrialists in their steam trains. The sky to the east is bright. The grass is green right up to the edge of a gleaming city. But the sky above the west is dark. Mountains or jagged wilderness waits to be conquered. The articles about the protest had a familiar cast of characters, too, if slightly updated to 20th century roles. The natives, the rancher who sided with the protesters for fear of losing water when the mine began pumping, the environmentalists with banners, then the miners, the government agents, the judges, the industrialists, the cops. As the story unfolded, they all slotted into place. But there was something about the split this time that felt different to me. Like the tiniest crack had opened up in the timeline. What was obvious at first, that new technology was a simple path forward, became murky. The massacre, the land, the water, the air, the history, the crack of an idea that it wasn't the structure, but the foundation. As if this was yet another trade-off, the millionth in a long line of trade-offs, returning over and over again, a cemetery of headstones reaching over the horizon. But on this one, the crack of an idea that it doesn't have to be a trade-off. Like no offing necessary.
I told you, I'm working on this story, and something that I keep running into is I try to write it out, and I find that there's kind of these pre-existing roles, like there's like the mine people, there's the protesters, there's the cowboys, there's the cops. There's like all these people that kind of fit into these rigid roles, these sort of like things that have already been written. And then it's just the job of, the person with the microphone to write it all out in order. And every time I do that, it feels wrong for the story, and it's like, I'm finding that it's so much more complicated than that. And I'm wondering, what, as a two-spirited person, as a native person, how do those roles look to you?
To me, they look really rigid. They can act that way. But I look at it just an act. And I've actually seen the difference. If I'm sitting there, they'll feel that I guess we carry a power that they can't explain. But I'll see that attitude change. And it's fun to watch that.
Whose attitude do you see change? Like, who's that?
Well, me and my brother were eating, and this young cop, kept getting up, and he'd go get his drink, and he'd stand there and look at us. I don't know what it was going through his mind, but he'd look at us, and he'd walk back and sit down. And he kept getting this look. I know that look in the eye when they look at you like that. And that's that two-spirit power kind of working on him. And he'd come back, and it's entertaining to me to watch that change, to see that change in people, guys especially. And it's kind of entertaining just to watch that.
And do you think that's them kind of confronting, sort of the porousness of a boundary, like seeing somebody and feeling that they're different and having to kind of, change their own heart around that?
I think so. I guess in their mind, they're not thinking like that, but all of a sudden that thought comes in that, hey, and then you can see them really getting stressed out because they're trying to change that thought that come into their mind. I'd say in my scientific research, a lot of our people are bisexual. They don't want to come out or they get ashamed of it.
And that sounds like fun research.
I just come up with these crazy numbers. But I say 60% of our people are bisexual. They look at me like, what? I just tease them. And the cowboys, they're even more. 80% of them.
those who feast with the mountain lions. You said that some of that teaching is gone, but what does that mean to you? The image of being out there with the mountain lions, like what does that mean?
That term is so old. Kakwituhu no tukar. Those who feast with the mountain lion. It's so old that we lost the meaning of why they referred to us as those who feast with the mountain lion. And they say, in order to find out, you have to go on a hill fasting. You have to go and ask spirits, why were we referred to as those who feast with the mountain lion? So I haven't found the young people yet to go up on the hill and ask the spirit, why were we given that name?
Dean went out to camp a few times, his sacred obligation as a two-spirit person. He said prayers to try to bring peace to the souls of the dead, to try to show the way to another place. A winding path into the sagebrush.
Just to be with them so they're not alone.
Maybe the boundaries are there.
Then we have songs, we sing.
Identity, timeline, life, death.
Right. When they quit breathing, when they've taken their last breath.
And maybe with the right guide, it's possible to pass through any one of them.
But we stay with them to help people on their journey.
For 2 years, the lawsuit to stop the mine navigated the court system. Disagreements within the most proximate tribal community, then infighting between groups and social media accounts tied the whole thing up in an ugly knot. The lawsuit went to Reno, then a district court in Southern California, and then went nowhere. Denied and dropped into the court's filing cabinets. In June 2023, cops from the Winnemucca Sheriff's Office and the mine's private security arrived to break up camp for good. Police arrested one protester, a Dene woman who would only identify herself as Oksam, the name of one of 3 survivors of the massacre in 1865. According to the protesters, police confiscated many of their belongings, and the long wooden posts of the teepee, sacred objects in themselves, were snapped. A feat not likely done by hand. The members of camp then scattered home, and Lithium Americas signed a deal with General Motors to supply lithium for their electric car operations. They were then awarded a $2.2 billion loan from the federal government of the United States.
We'll be dealing with all the destruction that they did to the land. I always say, we'll still be here but we're going to deal with the destruction, the desecration, the big holes that they dig. We'll have to deal with that when that time comes, but I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think of humans anymore. It's gone crazy. We've lost it. These are part of the prophecies that we've always had, that time of chaos and confusion. Old people say time of great craziness. And that time is here now. Just looking at it. Looking at everything that's going on in this country.
I mean, what comes after that in the prophecies, after the time of, great craziness?
The time that comes is a new world. A green world, healthy world, where we could drink the water like we used to before these other people came in. really thinking about that time. It's going to be a way different time. The weather will be back to normal. Everything will be back to normal, like it used to be. We'll have game. Things will come back. Won't be so much hatred for the world, for Mother Earth like there is today. Won't be not so much greed. We'll help each other. We'll take care of each other. Big change. It'll take time, but it's coming.
Just 1 week east of the raid, I'm crouching in the sagebrush. The western meadowlark sings a dissonant duet with the rhythmic beep of a half-dozen hungry machines. I stay on open land, skirting the fence, and I drive onto a ridge for a better view, followed by mine security in a pickup. The man points some unknown handheld radar-like gun at my truck. 2 crows circle overhead as I watch security through my binoculars. And then he looks at me through his. A long-distance staring contest. So too in the town of Winnemucca, a new man camp springing up on the edge of town, the man shouting at me from his white pickup, threatening to call the cops for observing from the roadside. The sound of crushing and beeping emanating from the work site on the edge of town belongs to him and his company. Above the mine, I stop on the dirt road just paces from a pronghorn. I've surprised her, frozen not far from a brand new sign, "No trespassing," on a brand new fence post. The both of us are on public land. Mining companies don't buy the land out here, they just get permission from the government to mine it, but only one of us can pass with the security truck looking on. And so, we part. The pronghorn heads towards the ridge, once quiet, now industrial site, the place that used to be no longer in the land of the living. Its memory rising as dust devils beneath the heavy blades. I descend into the valley, its death framed wide in my rearview mirror. Ahead, through the windshield, yellows, greens, a purple range in the distance, the sky bluer than can be explained. The land stretches as far as I can see, and then I'm gone. Across from the sultry portrait of Sasquatch in Dean's living room, there is a stack of paper on the table. A braided length of sweetgrass is laid carefully across the top page. This stack of paper is a lawsuit filed by Lithium Americas against 7 of the protesters. The mining company claims trespass, physical intimidation, oppression, fraud, malice, theft of a fire extinguisher missing from one of their machines, nuisance, and the unreasonable interference of the miners' enjoyment of land by Dean and 6 others. In Nevada, slap suits or strategic lawsuits against public participation are illegal. But it's been a year or 2. And the courts have not thrown it out. The protesters are legally barred from returning to the site, and if they lose, they could have to pay the multinational corporation a yet undetermined amount of money.
Nevada, people think it's a wasteland. Maybe that's why the mining companies are coming here. Nuclear storage facilities, they say there's nothing here, but you get out on the land, it's really pretty, beautiful. There's places you wouldn't even ever imagine in your whole lifetime seeing, but there's places like that north of us, northern Nevada. Really spectacular beauty. The beauty is something else. That's all I could say.
Do you think, as a two-spirited person, that you have a different relationship with death?
I think so. We know what death is. We know the other place. I've gone to the other place and seen it. It's very beautiful. So I've gone 3 times, I guess, in my hospital stays. And I seen my mom, my dad, my grandmas standing there waiting for me. I'm walking up this little trail with green grass and flowers, sagebrush all around. You can hear the birds singing. And I got closer and I was happy. But as I got closer, my dad or my grandma or grandpa pointed back down the trail and just told me, you need to go back. You're not ready yet. It's not your time. So you have to go back. So I was really sad and turned around and came back. But that's our relationship with death. You know, we know what it is, how it is. We're not scared of it. There's work for me. That's why they sent me back. Still cultural work, spiritual work I have to do. So I got sent back. For how long, I don't know, but I'm going to do what I need to do. This is only one mine. They're looking at, what are they saying, 500 more lithium mines coming to Nevada. So we're gearing up probably to be protesting the rest of my life.
The Wind is produced by me, Phil Corbett. This independent podcast is listener-supported. If you'd like to join the community, head to patreon.com/thewind and set up a monthly donation. I've been working on this story for a couple of years now, and there was a lot that did not make it in, so I'll post some behind-the-scenes stuff and commentary on the Patreon. Thank you to Dean Barlese for trusting me with this story. Also a big thanks to BC Zanatsu, Max Wilbert, Olive Greenspan, Tata Tran, Ray Peng, Kate Cowie Haskell, Taylor Wilson for talking to me about the chemical properties of lithium, and Daniel Rothberg for speaking with me about mining's effect on Great Basin water tables. Daniel has a newsletter called Western Water Notes, which I highly recommend if you're interested in that sort of thing. Also, a shout out to the podcast Boomtown, A Uranium Story by Alec Cowan. That was an inspiration for this piece. I also read a bunch of books for this piece, which I will list on the website. The music in this episode was Camilla by Blue Dot Sessions, Combi by Ole, and the William Tell Overture from the Free Music Archive. Roots Connective and Seek in the Road Shall Become Visible are both by friend of the show, Iklept Insan. The Aeolian harp drones were recorded from the Snake of Truth wind harp built by Eleanor Quall, and on another wind harp built specifically for this episode by myself and Mike Corbett. Photos of that, along with documents, links, and more at thewind.net. This show is also available for now on YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. And if you'd like to support non-monetarily, help spread the word by sending an episode to a friend. Thank you for being here, and keep listening.